Welcome to Office Hours. Whether you're new to the acupuncture profession or have been at it for decades, this is the place where we discuss all things Chinese medicine and more. Join Toby Daly, a seasoned acupuncturist of the Som tradition, and Angelique Britt, a nurse turned acupuncturist who is brand new to the field, as they explore topics in and around the world of acupuncture and Chinese medicine. There's something for everyone here. Drop in anytime.
Ellen Goldsmith, thanks so much for joining us on Office Hours.
Thank you for having me, Toby. So you'd like to know who I am, I guess. So
Yes,
yes.
we're really excited to have you here. If you wouldn't mind for our listeners, if you could give like a little bit of your professional background, and if you could somehow lead it into how you wrote your book, Nutritional Healing with Chinese Medicine.
Absolutely. So I am a licensed and board certified acupuncturist and Chinese herbalist. I've been practicing since 1999 in that aspect of the field, but I've been in the field in Asian medicine since 1983, starting out with Shiatsu and a study of macrobiotics way back when, which macrobiotics, for those of you who don't know, was a way of it's a way of eating based on a little bit of a topsy-turvy way of looking at yin and yang that was started by George Osawa in Japan and brought to this country. Mostly people know about it through Michio Kushi on the East Coast and Herman Nahara on the West Coast. So I practiced Shiatsu, did that, and have taught for decades on health. I taught at New York University in the Tisch School of the Arts in the drama department. I started a program because drama students were burning out. So they wanted the students to learn how to take care of themselves. So what I did was I taught about how to build body awareness, focus, energy, and bring that into their presence on the stage. It was a very covert way of teaching them how to care for themselves, how to eat right, how to manage their energy, etc. And then for 20 years, I've taught at the National University of Natural Medicine's College of Classical Chinese Medicine, which was one of the first colleges of classical Chinese medicine in the country, founded by Heiner Fruhoff. Many of you might know him. And I've taught Chinese dietetics there for 2 decades, and I've taught for the Academy of Integrative Health and Medicine, teaching food energetics and Chinese dietetics to Western physicians and healthcare providers. And I also teach a course online called 5 Element Nutrition, which is open to anybody. We have students from all over the world. And it's a 3-month intensive, basically, into the foundations of Chinese dietetics. So, and through that all, I've maintained a brick and mortar practice in acupuncture. I work a lot with people around really how to manage their health through connecting into their body, which I think acupuncture is a great therapeutic tool for that. Giving people a different sense of feeling and different sense of possibility that you can walk in one way and walk out feeling completely different, and nothing has changed in your life except the flow of qi and blood in your
Mm.
body. So that's a beautiful thing, and I love continuing to practice. And then I maintain a consultation practice as well, working with patients and practitioners who might want to discuss some cases. So why did I write a book on food? And like, as I tell my students, I said, people will come to you and they will come to you for acupuncture because they have a problem that they want solved. And once they feel some symptom relief, they may leave you, or they may stop taking their herbs. But we never stop eating, hopefully, right? And we do that every day. So in a way, that's our most powerful medicine. And the beauty of our medicine, of Chinese medicine, is it's founded in the principles of basically prevention. How do we manage our lifestyle, right? In the Neijing, it talks about, why is it that people used to live to 100 years and now they die at 50 because they don't know how to eat well, they don't sleep right, they don't move their bodies, they don't manage their stress, they drink wine like water. So it's an age-old problem with human beings, and I think it's a great entryway into connecting to nature. Food is our connection to nature. We eat food. Hopefully, if you're eating real food, it's grown under the sun or it's raised on the earth or in the waterways. And it is the way we interact with it. So we can adjust it. We can manage our qi. We can change our blood chemistry. we can change our consciousness really with our
Mm.
food through a connection to our bodies. So I think it's a marvelous entryway in that most people can relate to. And I wrote the book so that it would be accessible to anybody who is interested in health and had some little curiosity about Chinese medicine. And I wrote it for students of Chinese medicine who wanted to learn about dietetics. And I wrote it for my patients. And really, in a way that you could enter the book at any point, whether you enter it learning about the foundations of Chinese medicine, the foundations of dietetics, seasonal eating, how to set up your kitchen, right? A lot of people are intimidated and don't know, like, how do I cook even? What do I have in my pantry? Like, how do I do that? So giving people a guide to that, so it's doable and accessible. And then along with my recipe co-developer, we developed 175 recipes according to the season. So you can not even read the book and cook seasonally and learn about the foods you can learn about the health tips of the food, what are the energetics of the food? Why is that food in this recipe? You'll learn some culinary tips. And, each recipe we wanted to make was, had a lot of flavor, a lot of interest. It's not just Chinese. I'm not Chinese, obviously, but, the beauty of our medicine again is it's translatable across
Mm.
all culture, right? Because it's founded in nature and nature is universal. I mean, it's a real kind of strange idea that we're all different. We have different cultures. Live in different climates. We have different ways of functioning in our daily lives, but we're all human. We all live on this planet. And, I thought seasonal eating was a great way to enter it. And then in the book also, upon the urging of Sabina
Mhm.
Wilms, who's a PhD in classical Chinese medicine, I have a chapter on blood tonic recipes for postpartum, post-surgery, and then another small chapter on condiments. How can you make your food, your dishes a little bit more palatable? How can you bring more flavor in? Because condiments in Chinese dietetics are a way to do that. Increase the digestibility, increase the palatability, bring a little bit of magic into a meal. And it's a great way to cook a meal for many people and have different condiments so people can adjust
Mm.
food. So, I have a big passion for food because we all eat and we're all experts in eating. Maybe we're eating things that don't serve us as well, but most people like to eat. And so, yeah, so that's me. That's my kind of short story of the long road to here.
Okay. Yeah, that's a great framework for us and everything. And you touched on the two things I really liked about your book. You really addressed the who and the when aspect. The
Mhm.
who being like, if you have constipation or something like that. But also, I really like that little section you had on there. What type of cook are you? You right?
Mm,
To really orient people about how they're going to start approaching things. And then
right.
my personal favorite, and then this always cut off usually is the when aspect, right? What's happening climatically? What's happening with the season? Right now, we're late May, about to go to June. What kind of individual foods, what kind of recipes, maybe from your book, are you recommending to people in general?
Well, I always recommend number one, go to if you can, if you have access to a local farmers markets, because
Mm.
you'll see foods there that you may not see in your supermarket. Right now, especially well, on the West Coast and on the East Coast, I was just, of course, in Western Mass, where you have Hadley asparagus. And asparagus is a great cooling food. It kind of helps get rid of built up heat in the body. And so there's a lovely risotto recipe that I use asparagus and nettles. We're a little past the nettle season, but nettles are a wonderful spring food, early spring food that are really rich in iron. It's very good for the liver, blood cleansing. It's also a natural antihistamine. So
Mm.
that's a lovely way to do it. I take, you know, spring radishes are out, and it's interesting because on the East Coast, where I am now, it's a little bit different than what I just left in Portland, Oregon. But there were some beautiful, different kinds, all different kinds of radishes. And radishes are like a pungent food, so they're really great for kind of breaking up congestion in the body or, built up winter heat or fats, etc. And so they're kind of spicy, right? But they're also lovely when you steam them. So I have this very simple recipe where I I have the radishes that I cut them in half. I have some cauliflower florets. And then I take the greens, the radish top greens, which are a little bit spicy. You have to wash them really well because they're usually quite muddy. And you wash them really well, you pat them dry, and then you mix in some sea salt with them. You chop them up, and you mix in sea salt and you kind of massage them like the way people massage a kale salad, and until it gets shiny and a little wet. And you just let it sit for about, you can even let it sit overnight. And what it does is does a light ferment. So you have
Mm,
kind of steamed, very simple, where the radishes turn almost sweet, like the way daikon radish will do that when you cook it. And the cauliflower, of course, is a little bit fragrant, but also kind of sweet. And then you put this, this kind of lightly fermented spicy green on top. And it's just a very nice way to get a little bit of a surprise in a vegetable dish and very spring-like. Chives, garlic chives, spring chives, of course, again, have that kind of pungent upward motion of, coming out of the earth and also moving. Pungent is a flavor in Chinese dietetics that, of course, we use it in herbalism as well, that it rises and brings things to the surface, which is a great energy of spring, right? Spring is about, rising up, growing, bursting forth. And so it's a beautiful kind of metaphor, but also true in its food action to bring in a little bit of more flavor. You can chop up chives and put it on steamed rice if you have that, or you can mix it in a light kind of salad dressing.
yeah,
Okay.
the corners of my mouth were starting to get a little moist as you were talking about all that. So hope you're not seeing that on camera too well.
And then one of my favorite recipes in my book, in the spring book, in the spring section, is baked rhubarb. And rhubarb is a vegetable, but we mostly know it as like a strawberry rhubarb pie. That's a very kind of common American dish. But what I do is I take some white grape juice, which is high in sugar, of course, and rhubarb is very sour. And I chop up the rhubarb into about 2 to 3 inch pieces, put them in this mixture of white grape juice, some honey, and some cinnamon, and ginger, and then cover it with foil, put it in a baking pan and cover it with foil and put it into the oven and bake it at 350. And the nice thing about it is that, most of the time when we cook rhubarb, it kind of dissolves and becomes like an applesauce, but this, you keep the shape of the rhubarb. And there's an integrity to it that makes it gives it a different mouthfeel, and mouthfeel is very important in our food preferences. And, that's in Chinese cuisine, that's a very important part of the cuisine. What is the mouthfeel? What's the texture? Having different textures in a meal can really satisfy us as we're eating. So, these are just a little bit some ideas. I think the thing in spring is we want to lift our energy up. So we don't want to cook things long and slow. We want to do more stir fries or quick sautés. Of course, soups are always great because they're so hydrating and nourishing, an easy way for people to get really deep nourishment. And so those are just, some ideas. And we want to use herbs. We want to use different herbs and spices, not in the spicy sense, but in the sense that it awakens your senses, because the medicine starts when we smell.
Mm,
My Chinese teachers would say to me, the medicine starts when you smell the herbs cooking in the kitchen, right? In the old days when all of us used to do raw herbs and, before granules kind of came into the picture. And that's the medicine starting. So that kind of aromatic kind of food, herbs that we can add to our dishes, really activate our digestion, work on our middle jiao, and make food delicious. And that's the only way we're going to eat well, is if the food is delicious.
yeah, that's true. And that just reminded me, just last week, I had a patient that we were cooking herbs for that was going to be a patient later. And we were able to cook the herbs. We do raw herbs at my office. And it was just so great. The whole office, it just had that really beautiful smell. So I'm going to try and do that a little bit more often. Angelique doesn't do much recommendations of dietary recommendations for her patients. I wonder if you could talk her into it.
Well,
I can tell you why.
I was just really curious, what keeps you from doing that?
Because I don't feel so we had a single like part semester course in Chinese nutrition, and I
Oh,
haven't. We went through it, and it was in the tumult. I'm 17 months into practice,
oh, wow.
so I'm a newer practitioner, and so I haven't circled back. I have your book. It was one of the recommended readings for the nutrition class, so I
Nice.
remember like leafing through it, but I haven't dove into it enough to feel like I have the competence and the way that you speak. It is so clear that it's part of you,
Uh-huh.
and I would
Yeah.
love to be able to speak from that space, or at least 50% of that space if I'm going to be giving recommendations to folks. So I just need to deep dive it again.
Absolutely. I mean, this is a question I get a lot, Angelique, from practitioners, both in our field in Chinese medicine and also Western doctors. Look, we all want to help people and we want to give them good advice so that they make good choices.
Mhm.
But I always say, physician, heal thyself. Do
Mhm.
your deep dive. And as one of my wonderful dance teachers many years ago said to me, do not noise your fortune abroad. Do not noise your fortune abroad. What does that mean? That means let the fortune rise in and kind of seep into your body. Let you have the experience of what it does for you, what you discover, what you learn
Mm,
about yourself, what you start to observe in yourself. And don't worry about your patients. And then you can start to observe it in your patients. You can start to ask them questions, and be curious about, well, just asking them, do you feel hot? I think a great way to start is, are you hot or cold? It's one of our 10 questions, right?
Mhm.
And then you could say, well, what kind of foods do you like to eat? Do you like spicy food? I mean, the simplest thing you can do with somebody like that who's maybe hot and irritable, has that kind of liver cheek kind of, is to, and if they like a lot of spicy food, is to cut those things back. But first, work on yourself, discover what it is, discover what it isn't, and then you can take that out into the world. I think we're in such a rush to help others that sometimes we forget about ourselves. So it's a beautiful way to increase our power of observation internally and attune ourselves to our environment and to the impact and feeling sense, really feeling sense in the body of how food makes us feel. And, and really, I mean, I really think food needs to make us feel like when we eat, we enjoy it. It goes down well. We don't feel bloated or gassy or anything like that. And then we have energy to go forth,
Mhm.
and then we get hungry and then we eat again. So I think we can be patient with the process and not be in a hurry to kind of help everybody, but just to learn about it for ourselves. And I think when you hear it in me, I think it's because that's what I've been doing for 40 years. I'm older, so, I've been doing this a long time, and I think in the beginning, I was maybe a little bit more. I was really enthusiastic, and I was kind of prescriptive in a way, and now I realize, food is a complex thing for people. It's
Mhm.
emotional, it's cultural. It's cultural not only in the culture that of origin that we may come from, but it's the culture of our family. How did our family deal with food? Was there food? Was there tension at the dinner table? There's so many different elements. Were we made to eat things we didn't like? You know,
Mhm.
all these kinds of things play into it. So I think the more we can explore it in ourselves and the more we become comfortable with just observing and knowing what it is without judgment and attachment, the easier it is for us to help people step by step, inch by inch. It's because change is, everybody wants to change like, right away, but change is such a process. And sometimes it's 3 steps forward and 2 steps back and then 10 steps back. And it's okay. It's just if you can be someone's guide and acknowledge and kind of help them connect to what's working and what isn't, I think we do ourselves and our patients a great service. To be human is, it's quite a task.
Sure is.
Yeah.
Thank you for that beautiful reorientation that landed.
Okay, great. I'm so happy. Yeah,
Yeah.
so explore it and let me know. Or you
Yeah.
can always reach out with questions and stuff. I'm always happy to engage and talk to people.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Of the practitioners that you are in contact with, how many of us are new to the medicine versus how many are the seasoned ones that come for the case consultations?
I'm not working with that many practitioners. Sometimes I work with like medical doctors, and that's really tricky because if you don't know the medicine, again, you're looking for the prescription
Right. Yeah.
and and it's hard to do that without the foundations. So I'm not working with that many practitioners right now, like on case studies specifically. When I teach my graduate students in the College of Classical Chinese Medicine, we will do case studies and explore that. But they're
Hmm.
new, they're not even out yet. And then in the online course, I get different people from different, they're acupuncturists, they're medical doctors, they're Shiatsu practitioners, they're Qigong practitioners. So it's a big mix of people. Yeah.
That's really great. I'm heartened to know that there are medical doctors that are also seeking out your advice and knowledge. I had a very recent encounter with a doctor in my own life where, it's people that just want to prescribe medication. And so I was like, what? But there must be other things. And this doctor, who is a doll of a person, was like, I'm not your wellness coach. I'm your doctor. Literally said that to me. And I was like,
Uh,
clutch my pearls, I was like, oh my
yeah.
goodness. So
Yeah.
it's,
I mean, it's tricky. I mean, I feel for the medical doctors these days. I mean, they're in such a bind if they're working
yeah,
under the insurance thing is really hard. But I do want to give a really big shout out to Dr. David Eisenberg. Do you know him?
no.
Dr. David Eisenberg is out of Harvard. He's a medical doctor in the Harvard Chan School of Public Health. He was one of the first people in the 90s that did a big study on the out-of-pocket costs that Americans spend on alternative healthcare. And it was like back then, 30 years ago, it was like $3.5 billion out of pocket. And that was homeopathy, acupuncture, massage, et cetera, et cetera. And he has started a program called Healthy Kitchens, Healthy Lives. He's been doing it for, I think, a couple of decades. He does it, and when I first heard about it, I was curious, like, why culinary medicine? Like, huh? Why are the medical doctors, quote, using this? But he credits it all to Chinese medicine. When he was very young, he was very interested in food, and he ended up going to Harvard, and he went to medical school, and he still was curious, like, why aren't they talking about food? And then an acupuncturist came, this was in the 70s, and acupuncturist came and talked about Chinese medicine, and he became incredibly curious and went on to study Mandarin and went and was one of the first 8 white medical doctors in China just after Mao died, after the Cultural Revolution ended in 1978. And he studied for a number of months acupuncture, herbs, tai chi, cooking, very interested in cooking. He offers a program for Western medical professionals called Healthy Kitchens, Healthy Lives every year at the Culinary Institute of America. And he always starts the program out with talking about the Neijing and just what I talked about at the opening of this conversation, which is that Chinese medicine, prevention is superior to cure. And prevention comes through our daily lifestyle, through mindfulness, through food, through exercise, through how we sleep, how we manage our stress, etc. And so I am constantly moved because he does this every time he introduces. He talks about Chinese medicine. Yet in the program, he never talks about Chinese medicine. But you have medical doctors doing cooking classes. You have all kinds of different people teaching food as medicine in clinics, in community centers, in churches, in schools, through the teacher TKC Teaching Kitchen Collective. So I really want to just give him huge credit for the work that he's doing and that the work that has been done to bring more nutrition and culinary medicine into conventional medical schools. When I teach my class at the college, which is unfortunately now not required any longer, it used to be required. It's part of the getting your master's, but now because of the entry level doctorate, it's not required, so to speak.
Hmm.
It's an elective. But when I teach my class, it's very heavy hands-on, experiential, as well as didactic, so that people really, can integrate those foundational principles in the kitchen in a way that is therapeutic, intentional, specific, to the condition, to the season, to the skill level, even because there's really simple things you can do and have very therapeutically healthful food. So I think I want to just say there is a lot going on out there, but not everybody's doing that.
Hmm. I'm
Mm.
glad
Yeah.
to hear it. So you're saying
Yeah,
you cook with your students?
absolutely.
Oh, that's so great.
How are you going to learn about food if you don't cook?
My goodness.
You,
Yeah,
you can't learn about it. I mean, you can learn a lot reading my book, but
sure.
uh,
Still, how
you got,
great. Oh my goodness. That would have been amazing. We're all
yes,
burnt out to go into a class. We could cook and eat good food. Are you kidding? Acupuncture schools
yes.
everywhere need this.
Yes,
Yes.
and I do it with that in mind, Angelique, as a restorative way, as an aspect of self-cultivation, really.
Mhm.
That we do it for ourselves, and then we talk about how it's applicable. And I'm really, when we're first practicing, we're very enthusiastic, and we talk about yin and yang to our patients and everything, and they kind of nod their heads, and they don't know what we're talking about,
Mhm.
So how do we make it doable? So like your Aunt Sally in Nebraska who likes corn dogs can get it, And there's a way to do it because everyone understands when they're too hot. They understand when they're too cold. They understand when food is too bland. They understand when food is too salty,
Mhm.
So we have to meet people where they are so we can get them excited, about it.
Yeah.
It's like, why else would you do it? It's just a burden for a lot of people.
Yeah.
I'm too busy. That's like what I get. I'm too busy. I'm going, really? Busy.
Going to see doctors, right? Because of all their
Yes.
problems.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Thanks for a super answer on that one. I
Yeah.
thought you were going to give Angelique the top 3 tips that you should start doing things with, but it's such a deeper answer. Thanks so much for that.
Yes.
I mean,
Um,
I think I gave you a couple of tips you could do.
yeah, no, 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 I'm
Yes.
saying it was much. It was more of a surface question, and you took the answer really deep. So I really appreciate that. Angelique and I are putting together a new Chinese medical school model too, and that's intrigues
Oh.
us for a mandatory nutrition class that includes cooking. That would be amazing.
Yes, I mean, I think anything we do in Chinese medicine, the more we can bring it into daily life, whether it be through Qigong practice or meditation or cooking on herbs and cooking with herbs, I think the more integrated it can be, into who we are and that can come forth to our patients too.
Mhm.
Yeah, the somatic learning never leaves you. You could forget the facts and things like that, but once it's in your body, then you always have that. So yeah, I think that's some of the most valuable learning I've ever had is that I felt it throughout all my cells, and I just never forget.
Yes, I mean, how did I get into Chinese medicine? I felt it.
Yeah, same. That was my experience too. I felt Chinese medicine, so then I didn't need a study. I didn't need a research study, double blind or anything. Like I felt it in my body. So okay, it's good to
Well,
hear.
now with this study about the interstitium, like validated, but
That's not very important to me. That validation. I'm already.
I know.
I feel like clinically validated. I'm good to go.
Exactly. Exactly. I think we forget that, part of evidence-based research is large swaths of populations experience, anecdotal evidence is that over long periods of time is part of evidence, you know.
Say a couple millennia. Do you feel like that's enough time? A couple millennia.
Yeah.
I wanted to touch back on something you said earlier, just some really pragmatic things. You were talking about in your book the extra part for postpartum and post surgery. Would you mind telling us like some of your basic strategies for those two conditions? Can you speak briefly about that?
Well, yeah, I mean, first of all, when women give birth, that's women lose a tremendous amount of blood.
Hmm.
And it's a very, very stressful event. I mean, it's a beautiful event, but it's a very stressful event, both for the baby being born and the woman. And so it's really important to rebuild our blood, our yin, because of course in women, blood is our essence, and blood is yin, so we need to rebuild that. And along with that, of course, our qi, we need to lift our qi up, etc. So, most of those foods are kind of broths, whether it be one of them, I think, is, cordyceps with duck, very rich, qi tonic building food, or black silky chicken, which is hard to find, but it can be found in an Asian grocery store, which is
In San Francisco, it's easy to get. My teacher,
eat.
Dr. Wu, loved that one for
Yes.
fertility and then postpartum too. Yeah.
So you're really looking, and you're also looking at foods that are easy to digest. That's why soups are so brilliant. Or you can make congis and add herbs to them as well. Goji berries, datsao, red dates, dongui, astragalus, different kind of configurations. I have a vegetarian Chi tonic broth in that section, and ginger braised pork, sautéed prawns and rice wine, or with garlic, ginger, and leeks. Very traditional for, postpartum women. Yeah, so I think it's really important to have these kinds of dishes, again, easy to digest, because you're tired, and also to replenish the blood. Dongui and astragalus tea, of course, dongui is the women's ginseng. It builds the blood, it moves the blood, it's warming. Astragalus lifts the qi. So to bring that back, so that, I think women need to rest. I mean, and they're not really, we're not really resting because you're breastfeeding, or you're dealing with breastfeeding, you're
Mm.
being woken up many times in the night to feed your child. So it's really important. The nourishment is really important. And of course, in Chinese tradition, also in Mexican tradition, and I think Vietnam, I think Asian traditions for sure. But I know in Mexico as well, there's that tradition of sitting out the month where you just really rest and people take care of you. Well, that would be so sweet, right?
Goodness. Goodness.
Yeah. So, but also, post-surgery too, you need much more nourishment after
Mm.
surgery to heal. It said you need more protein. So having these broths where you're not having to chew and digest,
Mm.
but you kind of get that IV infusion, the extraction of the nourishment into the liquid that you've cooked for a long period of time, is very, very nice. Yeah.
Would any temperature component for that? Because I know like surgical theater are always so cold, right? I wonder if do you feel like you need to warm them back up after that? Again, taking into account their constitution as well.
Absolutely. Well, a really nice way to warm yourself back up is to do like a ginger foot bath, just to get that heat in. If you have scars, of course, that's tricky, but even doing moxa on stomach 36, or if you don't have a scar, on CV4 is really nice to kind of give that, support to just a whole body chi and that deep kind of source chi in the body.
Nice.
Yeah. Also helps you, helps you to relax. When you're cold, it's hard to relax, right? Like
Yes.
your
You're all
body
tense.
tenses up, so
Yeah.
have that warmth. But, really heating from the feet up is really can really make a big difference. Yeah.
That sounds wonderful. I've had patients do Epsom salt soaks like at night before bed, but I didn't
Yes.
consider adding ginger. That makes so much sense.
Yeah, I think more for the feet.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's what I'm saying. Like feet soaks, like
yeah,
have them soak their feet.
yeah, yeah. Very
Hmm.
nice. Up through kidney 1.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that a lot.
Ellen, what role does intuition play in your clinical work?
Hmm. That's a great question. I
Mm.
mean, it plays, I think, everything in it.
Mm.
In a way. But again, I think that's over years and years and years of experience. And also in the beginning, I really, and it hasn't changed, but I'm very curious about people. So, people come into our clinic space and they tell us what the problem is. And a lot of times people will rush through that and then they'll get to something else. And it's always good to go back to the first thing that a person says. Tell me more about that. I think I like to create space in the clinic setting where someone can open up a little bit, and kind of see. I think because people, when we have, if especially as an acupuncturist, a lot of people come to us because of pain, right? And pain is something that we have an aversion to, meaning we pull away from it, or it becomes a source of focus that is like this a little bit an invader into our lives. And how do we kind of get under that to see what the experience of it is? Because I think we have to sense the person, you know? It's not just the problem that they're bringing, but the person who is experiencing this. And, sometimes people have this problem, but they're very kind of shut down and defended. And so it's hard to enter, right? So we have to be gentle. And then sometimes people are very, very vulnerable with a problem, and we have to be gentle. But it's a different way in. I really know, I've seen it over the years that people's nervous systems can take only so much. So I try to pay attention to that. And one of my teachers always said, less is more, so I think if we're very intentional in how we needle, or we're very intentional in how we converse, it can have a very strong impact on people, and we don't have to work so hard, and we don't have to do so many points. But everyone has a different style. Like one of my first teachers was a Japanese practitioner in New York, and he did many needles, but in a very interesting way. So I have, a little bit of his kind of teaching, and also because I came from dance and movement therapy and shiatsu, so I have a deep study of the body and also a deep kind of study of palpation of the body. And so, being able to feel the body and sense like, oh, the needle goes here, even though maybe the point says it's here, or just kind of inquiring with the person. So it's become a little bit more automatic, but it did take me decades to kind of see what is the system, who is the person, what's coming in the door, what are they ready for, what can they leave with that they can integrate back into their lives. So I think in that way, my intuition plays a huge role. And of course, my training plays a huge role too. So.
Yeah, they interact, right? Your intellectual
Yeah.
understanding and the intuition.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, do you work a lot with your intuition?
Yeah, I think it takes the lead for me.
I would
Yeah.
say
Right.
same. I was a nurse for a very long time before becoming an acupuncturist, and so
Oh,
that's,
wow.
I think, probably the strongest skill I bring to my own practice because I learned that interaction, that gentleness that you talk about, and how gentleness can have different flavors, and you have to find which way
Mm.
in with the right with what's
Yeah.
right for the patient in front of you. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's again, like I said when I first started talking, I mean, if someone walks out of my clinic with a sense of feeling their body and feeling a sense of hope or possibility, then I know that's good. That was a good
Yeah,
treatment.
that's
Mm.
good.
Because we jump out of our bodies so quick. I mean, people have their phones. I always tell people, don't turn your phone on right away, okay? Just
Mm.
take a little walk, take a few breaths, have a little snack or have some tea, and then turn your phone on. But it never works. People are like out the door with their phones in front of their faces sometimes.
Mhm.
Oh, how do we help people get in their bodies? I mean, how do we help us stay more human in this time? That's
Mm.
that's a really big question. And how do we share some kindness? I think in these times, these things have a lot more value than we realize, because the world is kind of rough right now
Mhm.
for a lot of people.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I feel, yeah, so fortunate. Our role is to put a little bit of kindness, a little bit of health back into the system, right? That's can be so unkind and so unhealthy at times. It's really
Mhm.
nice to put a little bit different spin back on it, person by person, right? I feel so lucky to be able to do this work.
Mhm.
Yes, absolutely.
Mm.
And also, I'm very aware just of what's going on. How can I support someone in when they choose both paths? You know, like sometimes we just need a doc. We need a medical doctor for some reason
Mm.
for some things.
Yep.
And so, how can we help someone? Put those two together in the way that they are both working. Together to help the person feel healthier and be healthier and more vital. Really, yeah.
That's the aim in my practice, being an RN and also an acupuncturist, trying to blend both, seeing people from all around the area doing that very thing. Yeah.
Great. That's great. Yeah.
All right, Ellen, thanks so much for your time and spending a little bit of time with us with office hours. We really appreciate it.
Yeah.
I would highly recommend everyone go out and get the book for themselves and then a second copy for your waiting room, because if it's anything like my waiting room, that is always out rented by other patients. So
Oh,
maybe two, better say two copies for the waiting room, one copy for you.
yes, absolutely. That's great. I love it. I mean, if my greatest hope is that this book is a benefit to people, or that it connects them to something that they can, make a choice for themselves that is delicious and good for you. I mean, there's a saying in Chinese medicine, "Triyao, eat your medicine," like eat your medicine, food and medicine are inseparable. Enjoy it and do it with joy, because eating healthfully is not a chore. It should be a great pleasure that gives back to you many times.
Yeah, but thanks so much for making a tool that makes that a little bit
Yeah.
easier to do. So we really
Yes.
appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me. I cannot wait to hear what you guys are up to soon. So
Okay.
please stay in touch. And yeah, if anyone has questions for me, they can reach me easily, like at my website, pearlnaturalhealth.com, or LNG at pearlnaturalhealth.com. I'm always happy to answer questions.
That's so generous. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Very inspirational.
All right. Bye, everybody.